Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wattsburg Area School District, where we are student-centered and future-focused for a world-class education. The board work session of February 14, 2022 is now called to order. Happy Valentine's Day to all as well. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we please have a roll call?
Mrs. Burlingham. Here. Mrs. Farrell.
Here.
Mrs. Hetherington. Here. Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Matson.
Here.
Mr. Morvay.
Here.
Mrs. Pound.
Here.
Dr. Pushcheck.
Here.
Mr. Blazer.
Present. Thank you. The chair recognizes Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Ken Berlin, for school reports. Will we have school reports next week, Mr. Berlin?
Yes, we will have a school report next week.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is guest and citizen comments. We have one person that signed up on the agenda early to register to speak. So, Ms. Jefferson, would you please come forward? You'll have 5 minutes to address the board. Prior to the comments, please just state your name and the municipality which you live. Welcome.
Tell me when to go.
When you're ready.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Jefferson, and I have 3 children in the Wattsburg School District. Ainsley is in 1st grade, Olivia is in 9th grade, and Owen graduated in 2020. He's now Wattsburg wrestling coach. I coach the current 9th grade girls basketball team from 5th to 8th grade. I'm a data and analytics manager, and I've lived in the district most of my life. My parents and in-laws are here with me today. They all live in the district. My brother lives in the district. He has 2 children at the school. My parents all together have 5 grandchildren at the school, and my mother and husband both attended Seneca. I'm here with my family and other concerned parents who support parental choice regarding masks. I've had enough of the COVID impacting my kids, and I have to stick up for them and all the other students at Wattsburg. I will do everything in my power to give them a normal life back. My oldest graduated in 2020 and missed the entire pole vaulting season, prom, graduation. Olivia has missed golf season, some of basketball, other special school events. She's more tired recently and gets headaches. Luckily, she has the awareness to keep her mask down as much as possible, but those that you are severely impacting are our babies. The elementary children don't know what back to normal is because they have never gone to school without masks. This is causing long-term impacts on a virus that does not hurt them. I've been treating Ainsley now for a terrible rash on her face, around her nose and mouth. She didn't show one sign of COVID when she tested positive, yet she had to stay out of school longer than my other daughter who actually had symptoms. Your policies do not make sense. They are not logical. You are deliberately hurting my children, and if you don't end the mask mandates and contact tracing now, then you are not following the Constitution. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court declared the state lacks the authority to require masks. It has been deemed unconstitutional. You all took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and you have not. You have taken the right I have to make medical decisions for my children, and you have provided medical advice without a medical license. This is the 3rd board meeting I've attended, and the superintendent's report have yet to provide proof that masks reduce the spread of COVID. The COVID cases graph he will probably show you with a steep decline of recent COVID cases show varying COVID numbers all while wearing masks. This means that there is no correlation between wearing masks and COVID rates. Masks are causing long-term and short-term mental and physical problems for our children. The negative impacts of the mask outweigh the impact of COVID on these kids. They cause acne, skin irritations, their constant discomfort, and distraction from learning. They lead to increased levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. They carry bacteria and germs, and when they are provided a dark, moist, and humid environment, those germs thrive and grow, and they are then inhaled into their lungs. Masks cause anxiety and speech delays. Yet not once has this board discussed the problem and risks of wearing masks. I attend most of the high school sporting events here at the school, and I've taken pictures of the audience, thus providing a sample of the population in the district. More than 80% of the audience in those pictures either do not have a mask on or are wearing it on their chin. If you vote to require masks, you will not be voting for the will of the people in this district. I strongly recommend you allow parental choice when making medical decisions for our children today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson. Before we move on with the other individuals that have signed up to speak to the board, our board policies do not allow placards and signs in our meetings. If you don't mind, please putting them down. I think you have made your point. We can see them. We understand your statements, and we will be glad to hear those that have signed up to speak. Mr. Sanita, you're welcome to come forward. You're the next speaker on our agenda. You will have 3 minutes to address the board when you're ready.
I'm going to speak on something similar. I'm from Wattsburg, have kids go here. Now, I'll give you practical knowledge. I do masonry work, a lot of dust. This is what I wear for dust. You know, this still does not catch dust. Dust is huge compared to the particles you're talking with COVID. What some of you are wearing are these, you know, N95s or whatever. Now, I used to wear these for dust. When you put these on, you can still pinch around your nose. But I can tell you from first-hand experience, I've been doing concrete work for ever since high school, 25 years. The dust goes right around and you suck it up in your nose. I couldn't tell you how many times I blowed my nose at the end of the day and there's dust. Now, dust is a huge particle, like I said. So if dust can go around these masks, the COVID's doing the same thing. That's why I've never been a believer in whatsoever. You know, you're going to get it, and you just have to deal with it. And I don't think it's reduced anything in our school. I think it's more hindered our kids than anything else. Because this is what you see. You've taken the personality away from a child. There's no personality here right now. You got to see people's expressions. You got to see their faces. That's how people learn. That's how you understand how I'm trying to relate myself is my facial expressions. When you take that away, you're taking away that kid's personality. Like I said, it's my belief to take them off to kids. I've never been a fan of them. So that's the way I look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Moving on, I see no one else has signed up to speak at the board. Moving on, the chair recognizes Mr. Ken Berlin for superintendent's report.
Thanks, Mr. President. As I've been doing throughout the pandemic, I just try to keep the board informed of what our COVID numbers are around the area and in the schools, so they can make the best possible decision. So the country is still obviously in high transmission, and by those two metrics, the cases per 100, 10% plus positivity. And you can see Erie County, we're still in high. There are some yellow spots starting to appear, so that's good news. And as Mrs. Jefferson had pointed out, I mean, there's just been a huge swing in the data. In January, when we were talking about masks or not, you can see we were in just an unbelievable spike of Omicron, and that has left just as quickly as it came. So cases are very low right now, which is good news. The daily death rates, you can see those have come down significantly. And this is Erie County hospitalizations, and the orange line is how many people are on ventilators. But that's also trending down, which is good.
How many of those people are children? Excuse me.
You can't
What
speak
does this
out.
have to do with school age?
You can't speak out in the middle. We've already had public speak.
I was outside and didn't get a chance to sign up. I apologize.
All right.
I apologize for being out.
Please let him finish his report.
So that's the data that's on the COVID dashboard. So that's what we have. So that's what we're looking at. And then this is the vaccination rates within our zip codes. Of course, we share many borders, so this is actually more people than live in the Wattsburg Area School District. But vaccination rates are coming up. This is the best they've looked since this whole thing started, so that's great news. And this was last month. You can see we're kind of in that wave of Omicron. And now we're quarantining way less students, and the cases are way down, which is good news. So just year to date, we've opened 1,984 contact tracing cases. Of those, 381 positive. Positive with vaccination is 78, without is 296. So just from that sample, we know 23% of those people were vaccinated, 74% were not. But good news, we were able to start test to stay. So far we've had 22 students and 3 employees use this. They've all tested negative. So we're eliminating the quarantining of healthy students. That's the goal of that program. So that's all I had. I just wanted to give you a look at the data, see where we're at. Much better than it's been since this all began. Most encouraging news.
Are there any questions for Mr. Berlin on his report? Ms. Hetherington?
Mr. President, I have a question. So with the test to stay, the only person that is quarantined, regardless of whether they're 3 feet or 6 feet or 100 feet away, is the person that actually tests positive for COVID.
Yeah, if you're exposed, then you test.
If you're negative, you don't get quarantined. If you're in the group of 3 feet or 6 feet, you don't quarantine unless you test positive.
That's correct.
Any other questions?
I had a question. I have two actually. One just as a clarification. So even with the test to stay though, that is parents' choice.
That's voluntary.
Voluntary.
Correct. Yep.
To the number of students that is currently quarantined, those are kids who are out of the school not doing test to stay.
Right. I mean, we haven't had it happen yet, but you could have a test to stay test positive, and
Then they would
have
become
to quarantine.
Okay. So do we know how many students are actively being tested to stay? Do we have that number?
22.
That's now. Okay, I was thinking
Yeah.
that's how many had gone through. So do we have 22 right now that are being tested?
Yeah, since we started this, about a week and a half ago or so, we've tested 22 people.
Okay. And I guess what I was trying to figure out is like, how many kids are we testing today?
Today, I think they tested 3 students.
Okay.
So
Which
that,
are separate.
those numbers, hopefully, it's another tool to keep the kids in school. We are very concerned that healthy students have been quarantined needlessly. We certainly understand that. So this is another tool that we didn't have before.
Not hearing any other questions. I thank you for your report, Mr. Berlin.
You're welcome, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes Mrs. Vicki Bendig, the business administrator, for her financial report.
Thank you, Mr. President. For tonight, I have the treasurer's reports. General fund, cash in the bank as of January 31st, 2022, $11,441,147.46. In the capital projects fund, there's $34.33. And the cafeteria fund has $419,773.85 as of January 31st, 2022. For this evening, we have Exhibit A1. Those are checks already written, totaling $128,212.33. And cafeteria checks written since the last board meeting, $228.98. And as of January 31st, 2022, the total in the Seneca High School activity funds were $77,635.74. The rest of the bill lists and financial reports, budget versus actual, will be available for next week's meeting.
Are there any questions from the board on Mrs. Bendig's report? Hearing none, those items will be on our agenda next week for your consideration. Thank you, Mrs. Bendig. We have one item on the agenda under legal advisement. That's LA1 mask mandate resolution. Is there any questions or discussions on legal advisement LA1?
Mr. President. I just
Dr.
wanted to
Pushek?
remind the audience that this resolution was a result of last August, we passed a resolution, and by law, we had to revisit it every 6 months. So in January, the board made the commitment to re-examine this every month. So we wouldn't have to revisit it until June, but the board made the commitment to revisit this every month. So that's what we're going to do, to revisit this each month, and take action as the board sees fit.
Thank you, Dr. Bushek. And this is our work session, so we are adding this to our agenda to vote on next month, or next week, I should say, at our full board meeting. Any other questions or discussions on LA1? Hearing none, that item will be on our agenda next week. The chair recognizes Mr. Stephen Morvay for finance. Mr. Morvay?
Mr. President, there'll be 2 items on the agenda for next week. The first one is item F1, a transfer to approve the following transfers, a monthly budgetary transfer from the budget to actual report as outlined, as well as a transfer from unassigned fund balance to the committed fund balance for the office renovation in the amount of $15,900. The second item that will be on the agenda will be item F2, which is the Erie County Technical School budget for the 22-23 school year, to approve the general operating budget as attached for the secondary programs for 2022-23, totaling the expenditures as listed with the district contribution and the Wattsburg Area School District contribution of $410,320. Those will be the items that will be on the agenda for next week.
Thank you, Mr. Morvay. Are there any questions or discussion on the items under finance?
Mr. President, if you would mind.
Yes, Mr. Morvay.
On the technical school budget, in case anyone, I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at that, but the conversation regarding the budget that they are proposing does present an increase of about 3% to their operating budget, and our proportion is based upon our enrollment, if you recall, and so our enrollment actually went up. So as a percentage of the budget, it's not an actual like a 3% increase for our contribution portion. It's actually about close to 16%, if I look at the right worksheet. And it may be in the packet, or if anybody wants to take a look at that. I had a little bit of an confusion on how that was arrived at, but I did understand how they present that increase to us. So some districts actually their portion went down, others went up, and of varying degrees. And again, it's all based upon the total enrollment divided by each individual district's enrollment, and that's the percentage increase, or that's the percentage that we all pay.
That's a good explanation. There are winners and losers every year because of it being participation based. So our enrollment might go up, and another school's enrollment might go down a little bit. So we share a bigger piece of the pie.
Right.
And this all came about from you guessed it, Mill Creek School District. They wanted it this way. So, yep, good explanation, Mr. Morvay.
Hearing no other questions, those items will be on our agenda next week for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Morvay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes Mr. Sean Mattson for Building and Grounds. Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one item under Building and Grounds for next week. D1, office renovation proposed to approve the proposal of office renovations as outlined. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions on items under Buildings and Grounds?
Mr. President,
Yes, Dr. Bushek.
could the superintendent remind us which offices these are?
Actually, I'll defer to Mrs. Bendig.
It's a portion of the district administration office. There is an area in the front of the office where it is a shared area. The office doesn't actually have a door, it's open. So currently our child accounting offices are there, which handle very highly confidential student information that should have a door. So the purpose of this project is to put a wall up and to add a door that goes into that office so that there's privacy for central enrollment.
Thank you, Mrs. Bendick. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I just have one quick question.
Yes, Mr. Morgan.
Or maybe two. This company, is this a company that we've used in the past? Or is this somebody that just, we've done, okay. So we kind of, I don't want to say single source them, we like to use them for recurring small projects like this, is that
We
fair
did
to say?
get 2 different quotes for the project.
Oh, you did, okay, so you had another quote already. Okay, that answered my second question. And then at this size level, you don't need to do a bond on any of these folks? It's not necessary? Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
$21,600 is the threshold for
That's the limit.
bids.
Okay.
So between 10 and 21,000, you just need quotes.
Fair enough. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Hearing no additional questions, the items will be on our agenda for next week for your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mattson. The chair recognizes Ms. Nicole Lee for personnel. Mrs. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of items for next week. First one is P1. If we have any Kelly substitute additions, they will be listed. P2, service personnel substitute list as listed below. P3, we are going to be going through a permanent removal process. P4, accept resignations for the following personnel. P5, leave requests for the following personnel. P6, appointments for the following personnel, and should that be P7, conference requests?
Yes.
P7, conference requests to approve Mr. Calabrese to attend. And that's what I will have for next week.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion on the items under personnel? Hearing none, those items will be on our agenda next week for your consideration. Thank you, Mrs. Lee. The chair recognizes Mrs. Amanda Farrell for policy. Mrs. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. One item for next week, the first reading, to approve the first reading of policy 246, the school wellness as outlined.
Any questions or discussions on the items under policy? Hearing none, that item will be on our agenda next week for your consideration. Thank you, Mrs. Farrell. The chair recognizes Dr. Andy Pushak for curriculum. Dr. Pushak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have nothing on our agenda next week for curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pushak. The chair recognizes Mrs. Leah Hetherington for technology. Mrs. Hetherington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have nothing under technology.
Thank you, Ms. Hetherington. The chair recognizes Mrs. Brittany Burlingham for transportation. Mrs. Burlingham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two items on the agenda for next week. T1, transportation request to approve the transportation request and ratification of field trip since last meeting as outlined. And T2, the SALT transportation to approve the SALT to provide transportation at BNI and NE Northeast students at a rate not to exceed $300 a day. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussions on items under transportation? Hearing none, those items will be on our agenda next week. Thank you, Mrs. Burlingham. Chair recognizes Mrs. Tara Pound for athletic and extracurricular. Mrs. Pound.
Thank you. We have 3 items next week. AE1 is the athletic resignations. AE2, extracurricular appointments, and then that should be AE3, I think.
Yes.
Athletic appointments. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions on the items under extracurricular and athletic? Mrs. Hetherington.
Didn't these people step down?
They flip-flop positions, so they
Right.
they resigned from head and assistant, and then are now being hired for the flip-flop.
Right.
Okay, so Mrs. King
Was second assistant, and now is going to be head coach for this coming season. And I
okay,
think
and then
Brandon
Brendan
Williams,
was head,
similar.
went to assistant.
He was the head, now he's the assistant.
and then Mr. Myers, is that Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Okay,
He's new into that position, I believe, yes.
okay, and then step 2 is that what we talked about before, step 1, step 2 is like okay.
The years of experience, I
Oh,
believe.
okay.
Yeah. Isn't it correct that everything after your first year is step 2?
Correct.
Are there any other questions or discussions?
Has there been any
Sure, go ahead.
interest in head football coach? Has that been
Yes.
posted or?
Yeah, so that, I believe it was
Is that
posted on
appropriate to
Facebook.
discuss now?
Yeah, that was posted to Facebook, and we have probably 4 or 5 pretty talented candidates that are interested. People that have coaching experience, head
Anyone
coaching.
in-house or
Um,
not in-house?
No one that I know of in-house for the head position. But a lot of times, the head coach will, once that's set, they'll look around and try to get staff involved if they're not from here.
Hearing no other discussion, those items will be on our agenda next week for consideration. Thank you, Mrs. Powell. There's nothing under miscellaneous for next week's agenda. For the Erie County Technical School Report, Mr. Morbe.
Yes, Mr. President, there'll be just a quick synopsis of our last meeting that we had at the end of January. Majority of the topics were discussion of the budget that was presented tonight, as well as for the agenda next week. And then just a quick update on some of the construction process for the addition going on, as well as some personnel items. So that'd be like a quick report next week.
Thank you, Mr. Morvay. For the Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit, Dr. Pushek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will give a report this evening. We had our last meeting on Wednesday, January 26th. At that time, our major discussion was about the board. It's a similar time frame. We'll follow a month later behind the VOTEC. Just a brief overview. The budget will be presented to the board, the IU board tomorrow, and then it will be presented to the superintendents and the business administrators on Wednesday, and then this board will be asked to vote on it in March. And just a quick overview, our budget at the IU is $65.8 million, and of that, Wattsburg's share is about $27,000, and of that $65.8 million, only about $876,000 come from the districts. So a lot of it is state and federal funding that passes through the IU.
I'm sorry, did you say 26,000 or 26?
26,000. So Wattsburg's share is going to be 26,000 that we will pay to be a member of the IU.
Okay, and then what was that second number?
This is just the total number of districts in Erie,
Oh, okay.
Crawford, and Warren
And then,
County.
and then the federal covers the rest.
Right,
Okay.
right. And I do have the preliminary budget summary, should anyone want to see this. I will be attending the meeting tomorrow to review the budget. Very similar, if you recall, the IU is what we call a pass-through agency, so a lot of federal monies come through the IU to be then distributed, disseminated for various programming. So I will continue to represent that. We did have a discussion on the IU has a very large early intervention department, currently servicing nearly 1,000 early intervention students, of which 291 will make the transition to kindergarten for next fall. So those are 1,000 students that we're trying to catch early to give them help. Many are in this district as well to give them a good head start on kindergarten. And as Mr. Berlin shared with us, we discussed the cyber school audit for their advertising costs of spending $35 million of taxpayer money. $35 million of taxpayer money, the part of which we pay to cyber charters that advertise to get students to come to their schools. So that's another issue that we should be concerned with. That's public money from our taxes that are going to put up billboards at the stadium and sponsor the Erie Seawolves, and that's coming from public money that we pay in taxes. So if anybody wants to do a quick search, just look up PA Cyber, money spent on advertising, and there's no state audits and there's no oversight for this money. That should be a concern to us, and I know Mr. Berlin advocates very heavily on our behalf to address this. And then the final item of my report, the IU, similar to us, had a clean audit. We were very happy with that. So a clean audit on $86.9 million is pretty good. We're very happy with that. Any questions from the board regarding Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit?
Dr. Pushek, is the small percentage of the overall budget that Wattsburg is paying, is that based on a formula similar to Mr. Morvay was explaining?
I'll defer to Mrs. Benton.
I'm sorry.
Is our 26,000 that we pay, or roughly pay into their overall budget, is it like the size of our district versus other? Do all districts pay the same? Is it a formula?
It's a formula. I think it's based on the programming that you need, and the size and the number of students that are in those programs.
Thanks.
And then it's a percentage.
Any other questions for Dr. Pushek?
That's all I have for the IU report, Mr. President.
Thank you. That brings us to board correspondence and dialogue. Anything from the board this evening? Mrs. Hetherington?
Any word on the bus accident?
The bus accident?
It was very minor. I think it was a younger driver tried to pass the girls' basketball team on their way to Youngsville and misjudged how much time and space and speed. So the car brushed the side of the bus and then ended up veering off the road.
Were the girls able to make it to the game, or?
They made it to the game. I think they were a little bit late because the state police came out and did their standard investigation. But of course, nobody was hurt, including the driver of the car. So we're thankful for that.
Mrs. Powell?
Congratulations to the boys basketball team for reaching champs. Yes, excellent.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Bushcheck.
Second, Tara.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're adjourned.